self. Great, thank you for remembering. Yeah, so that the kind of inner emphasis is really important to what we're doing. I don't feel like it's something that we've got right yet, but we'll share more with you about why we feel it's so important, the kind of things that we build into processes to try to create spaces that feel safe and feel like they build a culture of power with in the people who are there, and the ways in which it's quite difficult because we've been trained not to speak a lot about how we're feeling, or about understanding what may be going on for us when we get reactive, and it can be hard to break that down, certainly in one leap. So the assemblies that we've done are People's Assemblies, and we'll go into a little bit the different kinds of assemblies, and why People's Assemblies are what distinguishes them from other kinds of assemblies. And another really fundamental feature of what we're doing is that our main aim with this is to experiment with and explore building a new political system. People can and do use assembly processes to interact with the local council, with central government, and with other kind of decision makers. And that's absolutely fine. But our interest, and what you'll hear a lot from us, is how do we build a new system that isn't like this system? It is possible that we can reform our current system. I personally have lost hope that that's possible. And so this idea that we could be collectively involved in a exploration and experimentation is what I find exciting. Just so that you know, I'm not saying that if you want to work in collaboration with your local authority using assemblies, and there's no problem with that. But if it comes over to us that we're not really thinking about them very much, that would be accurate. So yeah, so these are some of the things that are underneath the thinking underneath the kind of assembly processes that we're going to be taking you through. And we'll speak loads about all of this as we go along. You will undoubtedly get a bit bored. We don't claim to have found all the answers. And there's parts, like I said, that we feel like we've still got loads and loads to learn. And this is an open investigation, and in a way it's not really a training. We're just sharing where we've got up to with this process, and we're looking for people to collaborate with, to co-design, and to think together with, so that we can all be part of this process of working out, like, how can we create a collective decision-making process that brings out the best of our human nature rather than the worst. And I'm going to pass over to Justin.
Great, thanks, Eva. Lovely to see those of you I know, and lovely to see those of you I don't know. Really great to be here. And I guess there's a kind of, what Eva was describing to me was this shift from the representational democracy and the representation of self as well, in the workplace or in meetings like this or elsewhere, to being fully ourselves, being able to meet, to make decisions together as our full selves. And that's something about moving out of this kind of barrier that we present, where we think we have to look a certain way to be able to be acceptable, and actually realize that it's our diversity that helps. It's each of us being our full individual selves that really enables us to arrive at good decisions. So I'm an anthropologist and peace activist, climate activist, democracy activist. That's my kind of background. I work with indigenous peoples, mostly in East Africa, supporting them to stay on their land and not be evicted. And I've learned a lot about people's assemblies from the way in which the communities I work with there make decisions. So people's assemblies are how humans have always made decisions. They got together, they've spent time. If they're lucky, they've been really well facilitated by people who've really thought stuff through, and they've listened deeply to each other, and they have arrived at a decision without having to rush really hurriedly. And it's ironic that we have 2 hours just now. It's a time limit, when actually the core of this is all about actually allowing enough time to arrive at where we need to arrive at. So yes, so that's my background. Been involved with Eva in terms of participatory processes here in Portobello and Edinburgh that we've been engaged with others here on this call, working on the Tory People's Assembly. And I was, as Eva said, engaged in the Scottish Climate Citizens Assembly, helping to push for it and being on the stewarding group, helping to shape it and then leaving it when it felt too co-opted. And in East Africa, I'm working on the assemblies, Indigenous peoples, women-led assemblies there, which are absolutely fantastic. And I guess with all of those, they do interact with power. They all are interacting with local authorities or governments, or whatever else too. So I just want to, when Eva's saying our orientation is how do we build a different system collectively, how do we create a different system, we're also at the same time always having to engage with the system that exists. So I just want to kind of highlight that bit, that our focus is on transformation, but in the day-to-day world, we need to engage with the world as it is too. I guess I just wanted to say one thing really, which was just kind of that, you know, cultures always persuade those in them that they are immutable and they're how things are and they can't be different. And any culture does that. So ours does that no different to any others. It says, this is how it is. You grow up in it and you think this is how men behave, this is how women behave, this is how gender works, this is how power works, this is how, and what Eva was describing was the kind of very hierarchical systems that we're in that we don't kind of notice because they're so inbuilt. The relationship of parents to kids, the relationship of teachers and schools, being able to keep kids in for particular chunks of time, the relationship of bosses within hierarchies. These are just kind of assumed backdrops, but they're a very bizarre way of being human, when actually we're born and we grow up as very responsive people. And I think some of the research on this is really fascinating. I'll just say a couple of bits. So a friend of mine, Barry Hewlett, who worked with the Aka hunter-gatherers in Central African Republic, was looking at the amount of time that infants are held or touched in the first few months of their lives. And it's 99% of the time in daylight time, and at night it's 100% because they're sleeping next to their parents. That's at 3 months old, and at 8 months old, it's 75% of the time. Infants are held or touched by a caregiver in that time. So they're growing up with a sense that the world comes down to relationship and people are there for you. And that's made really clear in his study of the speed with which people respond to an infant crying. So just two more facts. So I'm not good at facts, right? So don't expect any more from me than these in the whole process. But so within the first 3 months, there's a response within 10 seconds, 85% of the time for the Aka. So a caregiver will respond to an infant crying when they're up to 3 months old within 85% of the time. And by 12 months old, it's still 75% of the time. 3/4 of the time, they'll get a response within 10 seconds. Somebody will be there, making contact, physically holding them, touching them. Again, they're getting that sense that the world comes down to relationship, that there's a response, there's a world there, they're not alone. And in the studies in Holland and in America, the amount of contact at 3 months was between 12 and 20%. And by 8 months, it was under 10% of the time. And in terms of the responses, by 3 months, half the time, almost half the time, parents deliberately don't respond. So I don't know if that can that sink in? Does that make sense to you? I'm not sure I'm being clear, but you know, up to by 3 months, parents in our culture tend to not respond, deliberately not respond to an infant crying. So that's something, when you learn what you're experiencing there, Barry suggests, and also Sue Gerhardt and others suggest, is you're learning that the world is one that comes down to you in isolation. So I just want to kind of make clear that this is really early learning that we get, which is that the world comes down to us in isolation, that we're alone, that we need to control our feelings, that we need to appeal to others to somehow help rather than assume help, assume contact, assume responsiveness. So I'm just saying that to kind of try and suggest that it's very deeply ingrained in our culture, and the politics is built on that. The politics is built on that sense of being alone, of needing to control ourselves, of fear and of distrust, and of wishing for a controlling authority to put things right for us, rather than assuming that we can put things right through relationship and working with each other. Okay, end of my facts. Okay, that was it. You had my facts. So I just find it really fascinating. I think it's just so deep what we learn. So I guess what we're looking at is how to use assembly processes so that people can feel really heard, so that we can really listen deeply to each other's stories, to each other's experience, value each other's experience, value difference, and then arrive at decisions, deliberate our way towards decisions and taking collective action that comes out of that deep listening, rather than comes out of somebody with an agenda, whether it's me or you or whoever else, insisting that our way is the right way. So there's something here about the kind of the way in which the system, this process is something that needs to be happening inside us as well as outside of us. And that's not very usual in our culture. You know, you normally go to therapy if you want, you know, if you have a particular background and you want some emotional attention that you're not getting generally, or you go to politics to be able to fight the good fight, to be able to get the right things. What we're looking at is how do you bring the heart and politics together? How do you bring together that need to reclaim ourselves inside us, disentangle ourselves from domination processes and fear, and how do we disentangle our society from dominating political processes as well? So it's just, I'm just being blunt, a bit like Eva, just being blunt about that kind of like, it's deep work and it's incredibly rewarding work. And we found that, which we'll go into later in terms of the assemblies, that when people really step forward and step into it, then the amount of power that people can reclaim inside themselves is huge, and then between themselves is huge. And that's where the transformation comes from, is that ability to realize we have much more power than we thought. And it's not just a power to protest or demand, it's a power to create and connect. And that's really what we're going to be focusing on. Oof. I probably said all that way too fast. Tend to speak too fast. I apologize. Do wave at me if I speak too fast. Anna, Maria, I see you waving. Anyway, do wave if you need to.
She was saying it's okay.
Oh, you think it's okay? When I used to lecture, I'd say to students, please stop me, and they would all wave at me, and I'd just kind of go, all right, okay. So anyway, okay. So that was just a bit of an introduction from us. So you got a sense of who's here, rather than we're kind of blank folks. We were going to then just briefly look at, I think I was looking at, sorry, I kind of slightly lost this bit there.
We're going to look at the course just and just to look a few pointers around the course.
Yeah. So as Eva said, we're talking a bit now, and we will be talking through, but we're going to be having much more interaction and space for folks to talk with each other and to all of us. This is especially of interest to any of you who are planning an assembly or interested in planning an assembly, but I think it's also of interest, I hope, to people who are just wanting to really reflect and think through our political system and how it could be very, very different. So we're going to be focusing, after these first couple of intro sessions, we'll be focusing on the nuts and bolts, on facilitation, on design in the course. But actually, in reality, we have this kind of 90%, 10% rule, which is that 90% of the time and energy needs to go into the preparation for an assembly rather than into the assembly itself. So that preparation is huge, is what matters much more than the assembly. And actually the assembly and the preparation are only 10% compared to the 90% afterwards of following through, of the aftermath, of making sure that real change happens as a result. So we'll be looking at the nuts and bolts of facilitation design. And in some ways, an assembly is just a big meeting, just making sure that you're really getting lots of people to come, you're trying to solve a problem that you've decided on, and you're trying to have lasting legacy. But the key difference really that we're looking at here is this insistence on deeply listening, on valuing listening more than speaking, on finding what it is that you need to say, what it is that you need to contribute. So your voice is valued and others' voices are valued, and you're listening at a different level to the normal argy-bargy back and forth that we get caught in. So you're learning from each other's experience in this process. So there's a process difference, which is huge, and there's an ambition difference, which is huge. The ambition to actually connect with others in transforming this world rather than fitting into it as it is. So there's something about process, something about ambition, which is fundamentally different about the kind of power with people's assembly processes, which we're looking to take you through. I think that's enough. Eva, okay. Can I pass back to you?
Yeah, so last bit, we would like to give you some time to check in and talk to some other people who are here and begin to build relationships, which hopefully will grow over the next 11 weeks or more than 11 weeks. Please do be aware that some people are having to join on mobile phones and may not have enough data to appear visibly, but please make sure that they're included in the conversation. What we wanted to do with this check-in was just introduce a technique that we use a lot and that we really value a lot. It can be called go-rounds, it can be called council circles. I'm sure there's lots and lots of different names for it, and it's kind of as old as the hills. It's a way that people have met together forever. And you can go into quite a lot of detail about how to do it right. I'm going to be really, really light with how to do it, but the description of the rules is part of what makes it special. The fact that there are rules to this conversation and that we all keep to them. So we're going to be going around in a circle. And when you first go into your breakout rooms, it'd be good if get somebody to keep time and just divide the time up with the number of people who are active and able to speak in your session and the amount of time that you have to share. So you should get 2-3 minutes each to check in. So the fundamental instructions is that when you're speaking, speak from the heart, speak in the moment, whatever comes out of your mouth. Don't spend a lot of time planning it. Just as much as you possibly can, be yourself, even if you feel like you don't have a huge amount to say. And equally importantly, when you're listening to other people, which you'll be doing much more of the time than you will be speaking, listen from your heart, which is maybe a less usual thing to do. But it's just like when each person is speaking, just imagining their meaning, they're doing the absolute best they can, and kind of just seeing the whole human who is speaking at the moment, just receiving them in your heart. So when you're speaking, know that that's how you're being listened to. It's even online can be a super powerful process. But we're going to use it really, really simply, just to say who I am, how I'm feeling right now, what brought me to this training. And if you want to, if anything stood out to you in the introduction, you can mention that too, and or anything else you want to say. So we're going to close the breakouts about, oh my goodness, we have run over, haven't we?
20 past even. Yeah, 20 minutes.
Give them 20 minutes. Okay, let's go to 20 past. And enjoy meeting one another. So we've got a few people who might need to be allocated. Is that right? Who haven't been put in a room.
I'm really sorry. I've just joined because I thought I joined, signed up with one email address and have, yeah. So it's taken me half an hour to find that it wasn't that email address. It was another one. I do apologize.
Don't worry.
No worries. I'll just assign you just now.
So we're just sharing us up.
Thank you very much.
Sharing us up. Yeah.
I'll learn as I get there. Thank you.
Lisa, how about you? Or D dash? Aileen Chalmers trying to join the audio, and Aileen, people may have gone for a cup of tea or all sorts of other possibilities. Do you want to join a breakout, Justin, or should we just check, like rejig the time while we're here?
Well, we could do it in this group here.
We could. Could we rejig the time first so that I'm not feeling anxious?
Yes, sure. Okay, so 7:20 will be quarter of an hour late.
So everyone's been assigned now, just to let you know.
Great.
That's great.
So, and Lisa's with us, which is, you're welcome, Lisa.
So 15 minutes we need to lose.
Yeah. Well, I could be very brief in the Assembly's description.
So what we've only given ourselves 10 minutes for that anyway, given how much we went over. We maybe should keep that. People, I mean, this is what people have come for, is to know that stuff. If you want any slides during that, Justin, just give me a shout and I'll find them for you.
Yeah, I probably want the first two. But
okay.
So
we give people a 5-minute break.
You can save 10 minutes with the plenary if people are writing they could do that in the break. During the break, they could write what their experience.
That's a good idea.
You save 10 minutes that way. Could do the N4s with 15 minutes rather than 20 minutes.
Yes.
And actually, that should have been 50 minutes now, shouldn't it? My apologies for going for 20. I just felt like people could do with some time.
Yeah. Okay, so we're not going to do the plenary at all. I'll just
do that as part of the break. Yeah, just ask people to have experience.
Uh, okay, so we can still give them a 10-minute break, is that right?
Yeah, if you take the 10 minutes out of the plenary and then 5 minutes out of,
Yeah, I
5 minutes
did.
out
So
of course, yeah, you're fine. Yeah,
so the timings, I'm not going to change the timings just now because of my brain.
sure. Do whatever your brain needs.
Yeah, but we all know what we're doing. Okay, so we could take a bit of time to check in.
Yeah, sorry, what time for it back? 15:15, is it, or 20 past? What's the?
I think it was 20 past, was it?
Yeah, okay. All right. Joanna, do you want to start? Just take a few minutes each.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah. It's nice to just take a second. Oh, we've got someone.
That's fine. Well,
Yeah, this is the
that's
Someone coming back.
hey, yeah, no, this is Suze. Are you new in, or did you drop out, Suze?
I know, I had another meeting actually that's just finished, so I'm
Ah,
new
right.
in.
well,
Sorry
just
about that. It was really
around.
important. Yeah,
No worries,
Co-
it's fine. You're welcome.
cooperative party on community ownership, which is coming from Labour HQ. So
Okay, people are in small groups at the moment, so we're in a small group. So you're welcome to the small group. Just drop
sorry to interrupt.
down. That's fine.
That's all right. We're just going round in a circle, and we are taking probably about 2-3 minutes each to just say how we're doing. Listening from the heart to one another,
Okay.
and speaking from the heart when it's our turn. And we have Harjinka. We if we ever get around to talking, because we're batting people in and out of here. Harjinka, are you newly
Hello.
arrived? Welcome.
Yes, sorry, I have another course. Hi, everyone.
Hey
Welcome.
there.
Mm,
We're everybody's away in breakouts, checking in, saying how they're doing.
mhm.
So we're doing that here, but we're also fielding new people who are coming in. So we're getting interrupted a lot, but really welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, our only instructions are to, when we're speaking, to speak from the heart, and when we're listening to others, to listen from the heart. And Johanna was about to go.
Welcome. I was just starting a little, as Eva and Justin were saying, a check-in. So I was just saying it's good to ground after helping with some hosting, tech stuff. So was up here looking at all the windows on my screen. And I'm feeling good to have a little bit of space to pause. And also thinking about, I was kind of taking in the information that Eva and Justin were saying, and then also doing that. So I'm excited to hear more about the initial, getting that initial insight into the course a little bit. But I'm aware that my head is in a couple of different places as well. So I'm kind of, there's two things going on there. And also really pleased with how many people are in the group tonight as well. So it's a really good number here, and I'm feeling good about that. So yeah, I'll pass. I think that's me. I'll pass to Suze. Is that what we're doing? Are we passing along?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, hi. I've just come from a co-op party meeting where the report on community ownership was sort of delivered by Mark Gregory, and this was it was commissioned by Lisa Nandy when she had the Department of Levelling Up, which has obviously now gone to Angela Rayner. And so it's first time I had a chance to look at that report and hit a question and answer session on that. And I was one of the instigators of that being actually put forward by Labour Party HQ. So for me, it's just like a moment of immense pride and watching other people's thoughts on it and how both community-based responses and the author of the report and how it's been handled by government. And then also you've got the same thing going on with at the moment we had a leak, didn't we? Well, not quite a leak, but Sue Gray had mentioned in Keir Starmer's biog that they're planning to introduce citizens' assemblies, and so that was obviously shot down by the Labour Party right, by all the neoliberals, by Peter Mandelson, etc. So it gave a really nice opportunity to see who's who in Labour. What are those two forces? What do they look like? And there's also a lovely acknowledgement that yes, of course, this stuff's all going on behind the scenes. It's just not part of the election. It's not viable for it to be out in the open because of because we're in an election phase, and it just gave a good illustration of all the forces at play. So again, that was very sort of exciting and reassuring, really, because it has been all hidden away, and Angela Rayner's not really dealing with that kind of stuff as part of her, use of the levelling up brief. It's all about working people's rights, etc., which is great. So that's been a nice sort of 48 hours, really, to see both of those areas actually coming through on a political level. And that they've been with Keir for a few years, and that it says a lot about who he really is. The big strong hints about who he really is, and he is committed to this stuff. So that's all very exciting. And other than that, myself personally, I'm not very well. I'm feeling very, very tired, and I should probably go and lie down. Which is why I'm not more involved on a professional level with this stuff, which I would have been otherwise. Which is an annoying drag, but these things happen. So there we are. Lovely to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Suze. Do you want to pass to somebody?
Pass to you. You go next.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I'm in the middle of being a host and facilitating, so I'm feeling a little bit kind of like anxious about that. I always feel like, oh, there's so much more I could have said, or I could have said that differently, so I can get into a little bit of self-criticism around how I've been presenting things. But overall, I feel okay. You guys will be able to catch up and make your own minds up with the recording afterwards. Yeah, and it feels like we've been talking about a very, very different version of politics to the one that you've been experiencing, Suze. Which is, it's its own thing. I think it's really worth us exploring better ways to make our collective decisions, while still engaging with the ones that we've got, and trying to get the very best out of those. There's Aaron is obviously finding it hard to join. I'll pass to you, Hajinka.
Thank you so much. My name is Harinjaka. I'm from Madagascar. Harinjak. So I'm here to learn how to build a community, because I'm planning to start a co-op in Madagascar soon. I'm actually studying at the New School in New York online on a program for fellowship for a platform cooperative. So I'm in agribusiness project, and I want to help farmers in Madagascar to come together and then practice the regenerative agriculture. So that's my project at the moment. So I'm happy to meet you all. And thank you for having me.
Jess?
Yeah, has Lisa managed to connect or not? I don't know. Just checking. Lisa, if you connected, do speak. If not, I'll speak.
I can send Lisa a message just in case.
That's fine. Okay. Okay, so I'm Justin, and yeah, I've loved this so far. It's been whatever, half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, whatever. It's been really interesting, just kind of like just seeing 60 different people, or seeing kind of half of those people because they're visible and half, for whatever reason, need to not be. Just sort of that feeling of of an assembly, actually, of a People's Assembly or a citizens' assembly, just that sense of, oh, this is an interesting sample of people from different parts of the world, and probably mostly from Scotland or the UK, but you know, a much bigger range than that. And it's kind of like, okay, this is surprising. I don't quite know what's happening here. I like this. So yeah, that's my feeling is of interest and curiosity, and I'm kind of aware of what I'm bringing or Eva's bringing, but I'm really interested in hearing what other people are bringing. So yeah, lovely to hear both Sue's interaction with politics as is, in a sense, and looking for a way through there, and then hearing you, Haranjika, with that whole different regenerative economy, Madagascar. How do you bridge between New York and Madagascar? I mean, I work in East Africa and I live in Scotland, and I'm bridging between those two worlds. So yeah, so I guess I'm wondering, last bit is just I'm wondering what people are bridging from. And I guess that's what this breakout group is for, is people to actually say where they are. And so where am I? I'm really intrigued. I leave things to the last minute. So I've returned to all the kind of theoretical side of this in the last few days, having been engaged in assemblies and making them happen for a long time. And I've gone into some really juicy stuff. So I'm feeling very excited. And I feel like I'm learning this all over again or for the first time. And it's really, yeah, it's really, really interesting. So yeah, that's me, I think. Hey, and Erin managed to join. Brilliant. Erin, we're just doing a go around. I think you caught that, didn't you? We were just doing a go around, just saying, speaking from the heart, listening from the heart, just saying where we're at. So do you want to go next?
I was in another breakout room, but I got chucked out of it by my Wi-Fi. So now I've gatecrashed yours. So if anybody else still needs to go from your one, please, you guys go first. Because
no, we're over to you. Fine, that's great. Yeah.
It's just in at the deep end, Erin.
That's okay. I just feel bad for abandoning the room I was in. Anyway, yeah, my name's Erin. I'm originally from near Inverness, but I'm now living in Stirling. I actually met Joanna. Hello, Joanna. Before at a screening of the Season Change, and yeah, I'm living in Stirling at the moment. At university. And I'm here because I think that one of the reasons that lots of pushes for change have not been successful is because they've relied on a kind of centralized governing body, which shifts a responsibility away from us taking care of each other onto like this like state that, because we don't have the connection with each other, we rely on, and then we like they fail, and then we are in a worse situation, and then we rely on them more, and then they fail again. And I think we need to create an alternative, and this feels like a way that, yeah, learning about citizens' assemblies feels like a way of creating that and learning how to be part of creating that, because it needs to be initiated somewhere by some people. So yeah, yeah, that's why I'm here.
That's really lovely.
Very good.
I think we have a couple more minutes, don't we?
Yes.
I wouldn't
Yes.
mind. Can I just respond very quickly to that? Just because I have that. I just had this image when you were speaking there, and of a river forming from streams, and streams starting from sources, and sources being in each of us. So it's like it begins, you know, that this is beginning. So this is just one place where we are now. This is one kind of bubbling up, as it were. But it's a whole, just something about acknowledging all the places at which this change is happening from. I don't know. That's what came. That was the image that came to mind as I was listening to you. Was just the kind of knowing that there are many more allies than just those of us, the 60 of us, whatever it is in the room. There's a lot more people who are looking at regenerating politics and the land and society and so on. And there's a really deep awareness of that. So just wanted to popcorn that in. Yeah.
Yeah, can I just say that although I talked about national level politics, I've actually been involved in grassroots activism for 30 years. And part of Commons theory says that we need to seek a partnership with the state. So that's what I did, essentially. And the New School, Trebor Schultz, and the programme, the platform cooperativism, if it wasn't for my help, I think I would have been there done the online programs, but the fellowship Trevor did, sort of hit me to apply for it this year, but I'm not well enough. So essentially, I'm operating with this stuff on the global, national, and grassroots local level, and it's just we're getting some traction with potential incoming government, which is just really exciting. And also, I think the potential for Scotland is huge, actually. For many respects, sort of strategically, politically as well. But in terms of alternative economic development, it's a very, very interesting potential platform, really. So it's quite exciting to be doing this training with a Scotland-based group, essentially.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good. And we were saying earlier on that our fundamental kind of orientation is around creating a new political system, but
Absolutely.
that doesn't mean that people can't also use it to make allyships with people within the system who mean well. And I think we would never rule that out. I think it's just that that's where we'll tend to be coming from as we're going through what we do. So just want to know that all approaches are welcome.
You have to work with what is, and the other thing is that jumping on established platforms and structures and organisations is also, for resource reasons, if anything, really critical. If you want to create change at scale, which is what platform cooperativism essentially requires, how are we going to do that? Realistically, and having had spent so many years on the grassroots of economic organising as well as political organising. It's a theoretical basis that that it is established. The idea of the concept of a partnership state or a parallel polis, but how else are you going to get the resources? How else are you going to scale up? And also, how might it change the nature of the state itself? How might it transform the actual role of the state itself? Which I think, given the neoliberal restructuring programme has changing the nature of the state in the UK as stands tremendously. So really, we can act with the same boldness.
Yeah, okay, we're back in the main group now.
Okay.
So that's great, thank you. And that's really fascinating.
Thanks for that, Susan. Yeah, we have interesting conversations around that.
Thank you.
So what are we doing now?
I was next bit. Just waiting for folk to get back.
Yeah. I think there's some people will have come back when they saw that it was time, and other people will be waiting for their room to close on them.
All right. A 59-second warning.
Yeah. Have they closed yet, Johanna?
4 seconds.
Right. That's the last lot.
Okay. Welcome back. I hope you had as fruitful listening and speaking from the heart as happened in the group that I was in. It was really lovely. Just wanted to cover one more piece before taking a break. So this is kind of like, what are assemblies and how do they make change? And this is obviously just like a couple of minutes input, because there's going to be a major theme going through the course. But just wanted to everybody's back, yeah. Just very briefly, we're using a kind of understanding of assemblies, which is where we're focusing on people's assemblies, as Eva said. But we're also going to be looking at citizens' assemblies and at delegate assemblies or representative assemblies. Eva, you got that slide, actually, the first slide. So very briefly, so people's assemblies are open to anybody who wants to turn up. It's people who are passionate about a place or about an issue or about both. Normally it's both. And people getting together to make decisions. And as I say, this is a very ancient way of doing things. People have been doing this right through human existence, getting together to make decisions about their place and about an issue that matters to them. So this is a really fundamental face-to-face meeting of people who are self-selected. So it's really important to put the work into trying to reach out, to include those who would not necessarily come. And we're going to go into later how it's important to also acknowledge those who don't want to turn up and to somehow include their voices, even if they're not going to turn up, because it's just not the right space for them. So people's assemblies are about, they're passionate, people can be deciding on an issue, but the question is, where's the legitimacy? where does the power come from for them to actually be make the decisions happen, make them real? And Eva's going to come on to that after I've just given this very, very brief distinction between the assemblies. Citizens' assemblies are normally selected through sortition, which is a process by which you make sure that the population, whether it's a town or a city or a country, is represented. So the one that I was involved with was the Scottish Climate Citizens' Assembly, and it was just over 100 people selected from across Scotland, and it was weighted for gender, it was weighted for level of education, it was weighted for rural, urban. It had various weightings in it to make sure that it reflected the population at large. And that process, sortition process, is quite expensive. And the Citizens' Assembly tends to be much more kind of formal in that way. And it normally has a strength from that. It can have a strength from being mandated, as that one was, by the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government after that. So it had the weight of being able to be listened to by civil servants and politicians. But the danger that comes with the Citizens' Assembly, we found, is that they can then be co-opted. So if it's kind of granted by those in the existing system, it can also be co-opted by those same processes. I don't mean intentionally, but just in terms of very friendly civil servants. Whoa, can you stay back? Just
sorry, it went bonkers.
my co-pilot went wild there, folks. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I don't know how to change it when it's in full screen.
Just leave it like we don't need the slides. It's okay. So people's assemblies are a gathering of normally passionate people who are passionate about an issue, self-selecting. So it's limited in that way. It doesn't have any status necessarily in relation to existing power holders. So that means it can be ignored. A citizens' assembly is a representative sample of the population, so it carries a democratic weight to it. These are people who may have volunteered, but they've been chosen to be a representative sample of the population. So they're chosen at random. They're only there for that. So it can be a very powerful process, as we found with the Scottish Climate Assembly. It was a very powerful process that people engaged in a really real way. So discovering that if you select 100 ordinary people, they can really think and reflect deeply was quite an extraordinary thing to experience, that actually we can trust each other, which is the fundamental message, I guess. If there's one thing to take out of this is relearning our trust in each other when all the forces at work try and make us not trust each other for their own particular reasons. So that's People's Assemblies, Citizen Assemblies, and then the representative assemblies are ones that we're used to, such as Holyrood or Westminster in Scotland and in the UK. But those are kind of, those don't have to be like that. A delegate assembly, a representative assembly can be very different to people just turning up to vote once every 5 years with very little purchase on those in the assembly. You can have a delegate assembly, which is where people are sent as representatives and can be recalled. You can have ones where people are sent with a definite, it being very clear how they should speak on various issues. It's really the depth of connection between those sending them and the people there themselves, which really matters, and which is very truncated within our dominant political system. So we end up as in a representative system where those who have taken on that position can easily be co-opted by power or think they need to make compromises which actually are not helpful to the society at large. And that's often where we are with party politics, is a choice of the lesser of two evils. So we're always voting for evil in a sense. We're just voting for some lesser evil rather than collectively making decisions that we want to abide by. If I'm wondering actually if you could pull up that other slide, is that possible?
Which one is it that you want?
The first.
Sorry, I'm having to.
Okay.
I can share if that's helpful.
Oh, that would be amazing. Thank you.
So I'm incompetent with tech. Eva, you're halfway competent, and then Joanna's hopefully very competent. Sorry, that was. So go back a bit.
Yeah, to that one.
So that one's that's the top line there is showing how some aren't represented at all within that representative process. Some are pulled in and some aren't. The middle one there, citizen assemblies, showing how some people are. It's a random representative sample of the population, so it carries a democratic weight. You can't be sure what it will decide. And that's the whole point about democracy, is you're taking a risk of trusting people. And then people's assemblies, everybody who turns up. If you come on to the next slide, just after that, this is an example of what we've been looking at in Scotland has been local people's assembly that discuss the issues that matter to them. So the question there is what matters to you? And then why is this issue arising? Why is this problem arising? What's the cause of that? And then the how, what are the changes you want to propose? And so this is just an imaginative, giving you this as an imaginative exercise, is thinking, well, if you were to have local assemblies all across Scotland, could they then put forward representatives to a delegate assembly that brings the kind of proposals that have been made, the analysis that's been made in those local assemblies, that puts together a coherent picture for Scotland and acknowledging the very, very different places and parts of Scotland. So you're not looking for something that's a one-size-fits-all, but you're looking for something that's coherent in terms of a proposal that it could make to a citizen-led citizens assembly. So the idea there is kind of like local people's assemblies working towards a national assembly, people's assembly, or a delegate assembly, which then puts a proposal towards a citizens assembly for the whole of Scotland. And the reason why we're calling this a citizens-led citizens assembly is that our experience with the climate assembly was that if it's government-led, then it is government-constrained, whereas if it's citizen-led, so if it arises from below, it can still have that legitimate force which comes from a democratic process that is open to any perspective. So the citizens-led assembly there could change entirely the proposal that it receives from the delegate assembly. Delegate assembly is drawn from local assembly, so it's drawn from people who are passionate. It may put together a very, very great proposal, but then the citizens assembly is representative of the population at large and may say, that's nonsense, that's crazy, you can't do that, that's unrealistic, that's not possible, for example. So there's a kind of risk in this process, and the risk is fundamental to democracy. The risk of putting forward your point of view, listening to another person's point of view, and arriving at a better process is really fundamental. So I've just had a reminder on time, so I'll pass over to Eva to look at not what assemblies are, but how they can make a change. And this is just a very brief bullet points.
Yeah. I just wanted to take you through or to introduce you to an idea that will be coming up lots in future sessions, and it's just on the next slide. It's what we call the 4 pathways. It's got 4 pathways because Justin and I just disagree on pathway 1. So we're this is hot off the presses and still being thought about very much. So we had 3 pathways previously, which were pathways 2, 3, and 4, and then it became really apparent that we had missed something, which is that almost as a precursor to any of those, that there's something that needs to happen in an assembly for at least some of the people there, that they kind of go, oh, right, this is something I can do, I should be able to do, and I want to do. So the kind of political awakening that we're aiming for, ideally for 100% of the people who come along to an assembly, but certainly for a handful. And our experience in Torry is that the outcome of the assembly and the longevity of the things that we talked about in it would have been seriously compromised if 4 people in particular hadn't been lit up by that process and have come out and just like got to work in their community, which doesn't mean that there weren't lots of things happening before that, but the focus that they've been able to bring and the kind of momentum that has sort of brought them out of the assembly has been quite extraordinary to see. So that personal thing could be a pathway. It could just be that person comes out and is much more engaged, or it could be a precursor for the others. We might maybe in the course of this training we will decide together which we think that should be. The next pathway is like what can happen just in a local community without anybody else's permission. Direct action by local people to set up a childcare group, to turn that bit of waste ground into a community garden, to start thinking about putting solar panels on roofs. There's all kinds of things, and we're probably all quite familiar with the kinds of things that communities are getting up to. And that is the second pathway. So that's how you get impact out at the community level. The next pathway is building relationships with existing power holders. So that could be local councillors, the local council, the central government. It could be funders, just people with money, or big stakeholders in the community. A big company that has influence in the community, and that relationship could be collaborative. It could be one where we're trying to get these guys on side and trying to get them to help us, or it could be more accusatory or angry. It could be petitions, it could be demonstrations, it could be all kinds of the ways that we try to get the people who represent us to do what we want them to do. But it basically is saying, you guys have to do something. And the fourth pathway is autonomous citizen-led processes. And we put this in as a separate pathway, really so that we could talk about it as something that we think needs to happen. And it's goes back to this sense that we are trying to see what would happen if we decided to build a new political system rather than interact with the one that we have. So how could people who meet in communities decide that they want to do things across several communities, or maybe across the whole country? Maybe they decide that they want to have an assembly themselves that may reference government structures, but may still claim legitimacy for itself. It may claim power to do for itself. I think this is a really exciting idea, and it's one that can be in certain situations hard to imagine. But we think that part of our job is imagining how that could be, how that could work, and the act of imagining it can bring life to ideas like that. So I think it's way past time that we go into the break, and what we could maybe do is answer some of the questions that have been coming in the chat. We also, we've had to cut a little bit out because we're running behind time. If you've got experience with running assemblies or being involved in politics in other ways, or would you like to share any of your experience while you're making your cup of tea, or when you come back, if you can stick it in the chat and share it, then we will start, a different way of getting to know one another. But we were thinking of 10 minutes break. So if you come back here at 46 to the hour, 7 here in Scotland, 7:45 if you're here in Scotland. That would be great.
Sorry, that was just to re-emphasize that was a request to put in the chat if you have experience in this area or particular interests or questions, just so we get a better sense of what you're interested in and what your backgrounds might be while you're making a cup of tea. But don't worry if you don't get time. Grab the cup of tea. See you at 1:45.
Okay, thank you. Johanna, could we have the breakouts in threes? Just so that we can do it for a bit less time.
Okay, just want to pick up on some of that. Welcome back. Just want to pick up on some of what people have been putting in the chat, which is incredibly helpful. So I don't know how to pronounce people's names necessarily, but Rika talking about reclaiming public spaces, and we've been supporting assembly process in Nairobi, in the slums there, to regain public space, which is absolutely vital. It's an incredibly important move. So it's really interesting to hear that. And Sarah on citizen assemblies in Ireland, or being on a citizens jury in Ireland, and that question of how to make radical change real, how to actually make things happen from these processes rather than just have an assembly and nothing follow on. And Julia talking about Midlothian green spaces and working with local authorities. So that is important. I mean, again, we're always working with the system as is, while also trying to create a system outside as well. And that's something you're mentioning there, I think. To I hear on kind of power and how to make sure that we're not being dominated by dominating power is how I interpret what you were saying there. And then Chrissy, that on Scott Peck's work, and this great point about it's much easier to open up with strangers. I find this really than with your neighbors. And so community is a nice word for a nice thing, which is a very challenging and real place to be. So in my experience, you can open up in your family and have rows and everybody still stays there. You can open up beyond your neighbors with strangers, that's fine. But actually with your neighbors, that is where the real kind of, yeah, it's really crucial work, because you're restoring that ability to relate with people who are very different to you but have the same right of place as you have. So yeah, I find that absolutely fascinating, how you make friends with your neighbors when that can be quite tricky. I really enjoy that process myself. I find it a really fascinating challenge. Okay, so that was just a response to some of that, but this is incredibly helpful to get a sense of where you all are, and so we were going to suggest that this next bit, if we can get into threes, so just have maybe 10 minutes for you thinking of it in threes, so it's just like 3 minutes each, to just kind of maybe describe a community that you might either be engaged in or be thinking about being engaged in terms of where you might be supporting assembly to happen. So if you're not engaged in one now, if you're not even thinking of one, then imagine one. Imagine what place would you engage with? What community would you engage with? And what would be the biggest challenges and possibilities in that process? So where might you be engaged in an assembly? What would be the challenges? Yeah, what questions do you need to have answered to be able to do that? And what are the possibilities of that? So it's just really either a real exercise, if you're engaged in that, or an imaginative exercise. And just briefly in threes, using the same process of sharing the time fairly. Somebody starts, has 3 minutes. Somebody goes next, has 3 minutes. Somebody next. And again, speak from the moment. Listen to the moment, or the heart, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so Joanna, do you want to help folk get into breakout groups? We'll see you in 10 minutes.
Anyone here struggling to get into their group? If you're speaking, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Everyone's been assigned, so
okay.
Yeah.
Let me just on a break. Oh, we've got someone coming in. So I'll assign Rosie to one.
So we're going to come back at, they've got 10 minutes, so we're going to come back at 8. Oh, we've got till 8:30. Calm. Oh, great. So we could have taken a little bit more time, actually. Never mind. This is my terrible innumeracy rearing its head again. I should never be allowed to deal with numbers. We've got about half an hour.
Who needs them?
Very good.
Who needs them?
That's what I think. That's what I think. Just go with the flow.
Yeah, no, what's good would be to hear back from people. I mean, so if we've got time to just hear, because the stuff in the chat is absolutely fascinating and really, really strong. And it would be great to, just wondering how we do that. Really,
just,
really,
just take a few voices.
Yeah, yeah.
Hi, Luana.
Hey, Luana.
Are you,
Did you get
stuck?
a breakout room?
I was in a breakout room with someone, but they were not answering, and it was just one person and me. So
I can reassign you to a breakout room just there. Let me just do that.
If not, come back. Can chat here.
Oh, good.
Coming in. 1 second.
Yeah, so just we can just ask people who want to say something, you know, who heard something that surprised them or was
So yes,
interesting.
they preferably say something about what somebody else has said rather than oneself would be the way.
Right.
Yeah, so that helps men to listen, but also people generally. But yeah, maybe could have suggested that. I just had a message from Claire Farrell wanting to talk about this stuff. That's really funny. So it's just funny timing of things, isn't it? When you're kind of like you're in the middle of something. So, well, let's go on with it. Luana, where would you be doing an assembly if you were doing one?
Did you get moved to room 6? Oh, okay.
She got that you caught her right as she was moving.
I just was going to say about the chat. I've saved it,
Right.
and I can send it out. We could send it in that like email post each session.
Yeah.
I think that people should be able to also download it depending on the settings. We could invite them to do that as well, just to let you know there is lots of good chat there. So I'll definitely out after.
Yeah. Yes, they should be able to go to the bottom, shouldn't they?
Yeah, just 3 dots, and I was able to save it. Everyone else, I'm assuming people will as well, so I can put that in the chat.
Great. Yes, and we'll tell them that we're going to send out an email and share the WhatsApp link again.
Yep.
So I only just remembered to do that.
I did it at the beginning, Eva, as well.
Oh, did you? Excellent.
But it was I mean, the chat moves along quickly, so it's good to get in periodic.
Yeah.
Convenient.
Sorry. So Eva, do you want to take the next bit?
Yeah, I can do that. And
no numbers.
Yeah, just no numbers.
It was my funny joke.
Hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, but I would refer to the chat because if people are putting stuff in the chat, we can look at it between this and the next session and pick up on what people have said. So it is a useful way of letting people know that they're communicating with us as well as with each other.
Yes. Yeah. Well, good to do that. Yeah. Why don't you jump in as well? Because I'm really bad at doing that. I'm not, I'm good at kind of saying who can speak next, but I'm not good at that kind of comparing, making intelligent comments on what people have said. It's like, oh yeah, that's interesting.
That's not true. That's not true. But I'm enjoying your. So pipeline camps, humanity project, Rob Hopkins.
Urbo game.
I don't know.
Like Urbo is something based on transition towns that she describes as fake citizens' assemblies while simulating decision making in a fake town.
That's nice. I like that. That's great.
But they make, they use drama and games to do it. Sounds really interesting. You see
Sorry, go on.
Someone talking about a humanity project in Edinburgh, trying to set up a popular assembly.
Roger Hallams.
Is that who it is?
Yeah, that's not who it is. That's the project. Yeah.
The Humanity Project. Mm.
Yeah, but I mean, it's got but you know, people are going to that for a really good reason.
No, yeah.
Interesting. Then the independent stuff, Barbara talking about getting very involved through 2014. Believing people have lost faith in the ability to affect change and address power imbalances effectively.
Mhm. There's 3 dots not appearing on iPhone. I'll just reply to Francine.
Do you want me to? You got it? You can reply.
Well,
Yeah.
Francie's right here. She can hear. So
All
you
right.
we're going to send Francine afterwards. So don't worry if you can't save it. Is that right, Joanna?
Yep, that's correct. We'll get it out.
I was
in the
channeling
email.
you there. I wouldn't know quite how to do that, but anyway, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've got a few resources. I put some of them at the bottom of the program there, Johanna. That was just Barry Hewlett's book that you were drawing on, Justin.
Intimate
Is that
fathers.
some? Sorry, Intimate Fathers. Oops. So you can put that.
I can send some, and from Sue Garhart, I can send those out to you. But people don't want a whole book; they just want a paragraph or two. This way.
Oh, I see.
That's
Okay.
I'll send that rather than. I mean, you can send them, but it's like what they need is just to grab the bit of evidence that they can see in front of them and then use.
Yeah.
Then if they want to, they can look at the whole book. But I never assume
Okay.
more than a paragraph.
So you're going to send out the email, Johanna?
Yeah, I'll send out the email. I was actually just about to just confirm exactly what we'll include and just make sure I've not missed anything. I've got a list, so we'll upload the YouTube. We'll upload the YouTube video, and I was just wondering if we want to do that, like get the email out first, or do the YouTube before and then the email with all the links.
You can do it together, can we? No.
Well, no, because then we can beg your pardon. Then we can put the link to the recording in the email.
Yeah, so I was thinking, so we'll get the video up first, and then include the specific link for that video in the email, and then it'll be the saved chat, text, resources that you've included. Is that what you were meaning?
Yeah.
So the resources included in the email. And I was just wanting to check about a feedback form. Do you want us to do a scan feedback form at the end of each session or at the end of the series? Or what are your thoughts on
Do it at
that?
the end of the series rather than. I mean,
Yeah.
but
I
if
mean,
feedback-
we'll miss a lot that way.
Well, maybe some feedback at the end of the first one, just saying we could do some feedback just to get to improve it as we go along. We're not going to be asking you, but not at the end of each session, but just like
Yeah.
at the end of would be good.
No, that does seem like a bit much.
Yeah. But should we put that together tomorrow, Joanna, and send that to you, the stuff that the resources and so on?
I think the resources are on the document.
Yeah. But Justin wants to include some text from each of those books.
Oh, then tomorrow,
which is,
that's okay. That's
Yeah,
fine.
tomorrow. Yeah.
That's okay. It'll give us a bit more, time as well, for the YouTube. Right, okay, I'm going to start letting people in just now then.
Yeah.
Am I doing this next session, then you're doing the last part, Eva?
Yes, yeah, I think you're probably better at the comparing.
Well, no, but
So-
you could kick it off just now.
Okay.
If you, and then I can pick up. I think that's, so it's just like asking somebody to speak for somebody else is my suggestion. Do it however. What did you hear that was
Yeah.
surprising and so on?
Yeah.
We good? I'll
And then,
start.
if somebody speaks quite a lot, then we need to, so suggest people keep time to allow room for other people.
Yes.
Okay. I'll do 30 seconds, so I'll close them now. doing immediate.
You think that's everyone back? Yeah, brilliant. Welcome back. Hope that was an interesting and illuminating conversation. We just wanted to, yeah, obviously there's quite a lot of us, so we can't go round, unfortunately. But if you have anything that you'd like to share from that, the conversation that you've just been in, or indeed from earlier on in the session, this would be the time to do it. Particularly if it's something that you've heard someone else say. It's always good to kind of amplify others' voices and practice our listening skills. But really anything that struck you, that's been interesting, that surprised you, or that's confirmed something you thought, or challenged something that you thought. Chip in. Oh, and also, just in the interests of time, if you're as Justin and I were earlier on running on a bit, I'll give you this kind of signal, which is a roundup signal. It doesn't mean you have to stop speaking immediately. It means please just finish your point, and let someone else say something. And Justin will also be helping with this. So, Brian, you were first with your hand.
Yeah, I was with Carly again, and I'm taken with the immense size of some projects compared to the one that I'm here in Scotland. There are quite a lot of differences, but I think there's an underlying cause, and the underlying cause is probably just lack of democracy, proper democracy, and the people not having enough voice. But that voice has to be followed with actions, I think, or the threat of action at least. If we can mobilise enough, then I think we'll get our way against the big mega companies and their lobbyists. That's all I've got to say just now. Thanks.
Thank you. Martin.
I just listened to a really lovely description of a community, which involved it's somewhere near Glasgow, a climate action network, a community organic garden, with the cooperation of ScotRail. I just thought that was a wonderful combination.
Fantastic. And how was ScotRail involved? I'm intrigued.
I'm sure they can speak for themselves. Visiting the other community gardens, it was Adopt a Station, and presumably you can plant your garden around the station, and then ScotRail will enable you and give you free tickets to visit other people in their community gardens around other stations. If that's correct. If that's not, tell me.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Yes, so Adopt a Station you're absolutely right. So it's adopting the platforms or any growing space within ScotRail property, and any community group can do it. And they give you a budget, and then kind of just, apart from the really critical rule of do not have hose pipes and lots of water around the electricity lines, apart from the average safety rules, and they give you high vis vests, and and a really good budget. And we have now almost 20 members of our community, and our garden looks it's amazing, and it's got edible stuff that school children can pick strawberries on the way to school in the morning, and we've increased the biodiversity massively, and we've made the commuters into the big city smile on their way to work in the morning, because there's lovely flowers and things, and it's given a lot of people in the community a real purpose and a real drive. I would like to credit the lady Jean, who she leads on that group for our bigger Cargers Climate Action Network. Yeah, but it's very good. It's a good thing, and yeah, you get to visit other stations that have done the same thing. So there's a meet and greet, and ScotRail will pay for you to go to other stations, which we were blown away by. So for one of myself and another girl, we went up to Mallaig, had a lovely day out in Fort William, and got to see all the stations on the way up the Northern Line there. So yeah, anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Lindsay. What a great initiative. The things you learn. Sally.
Yeah, thanks. It was actually something that someone said about like the feeling of frustration when trying to make these things happen. Like, why do we need permission to do this? And it just really stayed with me, that this sense of like, hang on, who am I asking permission from, and who do I need to wait to legitimize this, and what authority is going to come along and tell me that this is right, you know? And yeah, I think I'll be taking that question away with me. Why do we need permission to do this?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I wondered if you had anything to say, Justin.
No, I think that's the fundamental question, isn't it? Why do we need to seek permission rather than seek agreement from each other? It's like, why do we seek permission above rather than agreement across? Because obviously we need to make sure that what we're doing fits with others, but the idea that there's somebody above who has to decide rather than we collectively come to an agreement is, I guess, the fundamental shift we're looking for in this process. And I just wanted to pick up some of the things in the chat, and we're going to send the chat out afterwards to folk, because there's a lot of really helpful stuff in there, and just what Barbara was describing in terms of getting activated through the 2014 independence referendum, and that happened to a lot of people. In my experience, a lot of people got very mobilized and a lot of very energized, but nevertheless then quite often end up feeling a lack of power in that way. And then there's a few folk from the Humanities Project, and also from the Pipeline campaigns. And I guess there's just wanted to highlight the kind of strong connection between democratic processes and disruptive, creative, direct action. That in a sense, what we're attempting here is a different level of creative, disruptive, direct action that is not about being on the streets protesting, but is about enabling everybody to be able to have a voice in that process. I've certainly been very engaged in being on the streets protesting, and I find that very, actually I find it a very big relief. I feel for the moment that I'm actually protesting, I am somehow absolved for that moment of my complicity in a system that's destroying the world, to put it bluntly. So I do find that moment really, and I know I'm privileged and so on, so it's a very, I acknowledge the kind of complexity of the situation, but I'm just owning up to that fact that in that moment I feel a real relief. Whereas with this work, as somebody was saying earlier, working with your community, trying to support people around you to get mobilized and get active. I think it's probably quite a lot of steps of the gardens at the station that was being described earlier, little steps that show that you can do something that then inspire people to take a bigger step and a bigger step. So there is transformational change does involve incremental change in that way, but you're judging the moment when you can take it a whole notch higher, I think is quite key. And we're looking at that just now in Portobello here in Edinburgh, in terms of possible assembly around climate change, in terms of the sea. We live right next to the sea. There's a real smashing of the pulling away of the beach, and a really, it's very obvious the storm surges are very obvious. So there's a kind of possibility there of getting people to really think about something which is immediately starting to affect them, but then put that in that larger context. We can't just put up some barriers here. We need to change something quite fundamental to be able to deal with that. So finding the pitch, what it is that will actually draw people to an assembly, is absolutely key. What's that bit that is going to draw people, and at the same time not being prescriptive? So that seems like a fundamental balance in the process, is how do you both propose something that means people turn up, but leave it open so that it can turn into something completely different than what you propose. So it is genuinely done. And that's most of this is a real kind of a judgment call that you develop over time. And I'm sure from reading people's words in the side there, it seems really clear that people have a lot of experience of this, but the judgment call of how do you both propose and then be able to step aside rather than dominate, rather than just arrive with a blank sheet, which nobody turns up to because what's the blank sheet doing there? So there's a real delicate dance there. So that's what you asked, Eva, and so I spoke, but that was my thinking in response.
Thank you. Anna Marie, you had your hand up. Did you change your mind, or have you? What's happened?
I just thought there was maybe be so many people, and I just gave it up. But like I can just simply. What struck me the most was Siddharth talking about the difficulties, challenges related with the caste systems in India, and that was just like that put my whole like day and like these months of activism into perspective. Just to share that cultural.
Yeah, it's massive, and the different cultures in different countries can often seem overwhelming. I whenever I speak to people from the US, I think is when I feel the most hopeless, because it just seems like such a polarized situation. And yet there's a huge amount of really, really good work that comes out of the US as well. I think that class is really major in this country, and we don't talk about it, I think, as nearly as much as we should, because it's often invisible. So when people talk about diversity, I mean, I was in an XR group and there were quite a few people of color in there, and quite lots of women, and it was great. And people were going, "Oh, we're a really diverse group," which we were, but we were all middle class, and nobody noticed that we were all middle class. And I think it's a sensitive topic, and people and it can feel risky to raise it, but it's there and it's huge, and it means that the vast majority of people in this country don't get what they deserve. And it's just another way that we're separated from one another. You know, we get separated one another through one another by gender, by race, by income, and by class. There are probably lots of other ways as well. And I think one of the things that the potentials of assemblies, particularly if we're really careful about how we run them, so that they really are opportunities for connection with one another and not just being talked at and kind of G'd up into agreeing with something, but they actually, we do give ourselves time and space to connect, then that can be that realization that we're not actually all that different, and that we do all care mostly about the same things, is I think it's really important.
Yeah, there's a paradox there of kind of mutual care and structural oppression, and they're both going on at the same time. So there's a kind of, we're caught in those structures of oppression, and we're also, people deeply care, and that's what the studies show, is that we believe that other people don't care, but we know that we care ourselves. So we're taught that other people don't care as deeply as we do, but the research shows that actually people in general do really deeply care, and yet we get fooled in a sense by a system that's designed to divide us from each other, so that we have to trust those above us and not. Again, some really useful stuff in the chat around ScotRail's been transferred back to public ownership. Was a good point. So part of our collective ownership there. And then that's Val from XR Sterling talking about running a taster session on People's Assemblies, and just making it enjoyable. And that is really core. This is how to make process one that is enlivening. And I don't know, Eva, could you just say something about next week? Because these first two sessions are just taster sessions, as it were, before we get into the nuts and bolts of preparing for facilitating, designing, running People's Assemblies. We'll be doing that with the rest of the sessions, but these first two are tasters. So the idea of this session was a kind of bit of an overview, and the idea of the next session. Do you want to say something about, Eva, and then we'll move on to the walking away questions?
Yeah. So yeah, next week is more, we're going to dig in more to the kind of psychological, interpersonal, creating spaces with care side of things. And we've got a few suggestions for how to do that in ways that don't immediately send people running for the hills. So I think this is, something I mentioned earlier on, is that when we're trying to challenge business or being together as usual, it can feel quite threatening. And obviously, you know, there's quite a lot of quite an important understanding around how trauma works in each of us, and also in us collectively, that is really important to understand as you're kind of designing and creating these processes. But it's not something you have to lead with when you're greeting people in an assembly. In fact, it's so far not something that we found a way to mention particularly. So it's all kind of, it's sewn into the fabric of how we do things, of the kind of space we try to create for people, without saying, now tell us about your childhood, and, you know, or whatever it is. We're going to do a training actually next week in process-oriented psychology and their world work. And I'm interested in looking for ways where we can be a bit more upfront, because I don't like this feeling that there's a kind of like hidden agenda. And yet at the same time, it feels so crucial to me that we do address that level, because that's where, for me, where real change can happen. Anyway, we will be lifting the lid on all of that next week. And like I say, looking at some kind of practical things that we can think about while we're designing things. The week after that is a bit of a kind of random stray session of just like facilitation skills. Some people will be experienced facilitators in that group, and you may want to take a break that week. But it's often when we talk about preparing for assemblies, it's the facilitation bit that people are thinking about. And it felt like it would be really helpful just to give a kind of lowdown on how you do that. So it's really quite a practical, these are the kind of things you need to think about if you're facilitating these kinds of processes. And then we get into a really big chunk on design and the various different bits of oh no, then we don't. Then we get into the preparation, how we connect with our communities, because again, that's a huge job, and in fact can often feel like you're doing lots and lots of mini assemblies, maybe just between 2 or 3 people, or maybe the steering group that you create can often feel like an assembly in itself. Which is, so that's really interesting, just like how we map our communities and how we reach out into them. Then we get into the design, designing the right, you know, kind of calling question, or sometimes it's not a question, sometimes it's a proposal. But like really working out how to get that, the most likely to get the most people through your door. And very often it's not to say, come and talk about how bad climate change is. It can be, depending on the moment and the community, but it also can be talking about something completely different. In Torry, we were talking about the local park and the local authority plans for it, and we still came out of that assembly with plans to make to retrofit every house in Torry. So it's like they don't necessarily go in a straight line, assemblies. So yes, so there's lots of stuff on that, and then there's a session at the end where we look at like, okay, so what are the next steps, and where do these lead, and how much of your life are you going to give over to trying to make whatever comes out of your assembly actually happen. Are there any more questions?
Okay, my favorite thing is when a session ends early. Don't know about the rest of you, but it always feels like, oh, that's given me a gift of 5 minutes. So I just wanted to suggest that I guess the bit of kind of homework, is that the right word? Home fun? I don't know. But whether you might, between now and next week, ask someone, anybody, what hope they have in the current political system. And if they have great hope, that's lovely. And if they don't, then what they might want to see instead. So just ask somebody, just have that conversation with somebody at a bus stop or at your kitchen table or wherever. What hope do you have?
Or even just inside your own head. We're going to use it as a kind of check-in question for next session. So have a think about it, even if you don't manage to talk to to anybody about it, and we can have a share around that. Johanna's just put the resource on council circles that we've written in case you want to know a little bit more of the detail. That's a couple of pages, and there's much more than that if you want to dig right into them. There's a whole subculture around council circles that are pretty magical things. And we also thought that it would be good to have a WhatsApp group for those of you who want. We were imagining that this is for kind of sharing resources, sharing ideas, chatting, asking questions, or starting conversations. So it might be quite busy during the 11 weeks of the course, which might mean that some of you would rather not be on it. We will send out the kind of basics by email anyway. But if you're interested in a more of a chatty thing, then please do join via that link. And the question, Justin, was?
Put it in the chat.
Oh, thank you. What do you hope?
What hope? And if not,
You
what would you like instead? And having said release you all early, I think we should do that. It's terrible when somebody says coffee break, then it doesn't happen for 10 minutes. It's a terrible thing. So let's grab that coffee or that sleep or whatever you need. Lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for turning up. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you so
See you
much.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Bye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice to see you. Jane was asking about the process-oriented thing.
All right. Okay. Send the message. Send it to her. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just can't leave. I really enjoyed that, but I can't leave.
I think I can remove you. I'll remove you, Rachel. Okay. There you go. You're gone.
Thank you so much, Eva, Justin. Have a good rest.
Where are you?
Thank you for being here.
Where's PT?
Lisbon. PT is short for Portugal.
Whoa, of course. Sorry.
It's okay.
Lovely.
Okay.
Good.
XR, Extinction Rebellion.
Great.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you. Cheers. Okay. Anything else?
All good.
Yeah, we got our timing slightly muddled up, but I think that's really good. I do think leaving early is good. I just say, I've always big believer in people having being given 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's good, and I think it's good for me. I feel like I've got more of a sense of like how long things take, and we'll rebalance the future sessions a bit more and just try and do less.
It's good. It went in waves. It was kind of like, oh, not enough time. Then
Yeah.
it was going, it takes it's feeling it out, isn't it, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I need to get myself a stopwatch or something.
Or just a watch. Actually, so you've got the time.
Brain.
So there's a time there because
Yeah. No, you're right. Okay, so I'll send you some stuff either this evening or tomorrow morning for the email. But thanks so much for your help. That was great.
Yeah.
It was really helpful having you here.
Yeah, how was it, Joanna? How was it for you?
Yeah, grand. Like lots of good chats.
Yeah.
Really, I'm just again pleased with the numbers there. I hope that felt like a good number for you both. And yeah, in terms of tech, I feel like it'll get smoother as well as we go along. But I feel like there wasn't any big hiccups, it felt like. I'll get the screen sharing sorted as well for next time in the sound.
I agree. It was good. People felt engaged as well. It felt like there was a good turnout, and people were all still there because they had every chance to leave, and the 58 was still there. At the so
at the peak, I think it was about 6. Well, I kept checking. 60, I wrote down. And at 58, so it's 58 on leaving. I mean, that's really good cleaning.
That was a really good sign. I mean, that's because I know when I go to things, it's like partway through, it's like, this isn't for me, and I'll leave, and that's totally fair enough. And so I was really surprised when they kept coming back and it's 58. Yeah, so that's great.
Especially with breakouts and things, so
Yeah.
Some people leave, and yeah, but that's great.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too both.
Great. Ciao.
Yes, good. See you soon.
Oh, bye. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Oops. Right. They've all gone. Okay, stuff.
Sounds like a good number of people you had go to your tour.
Yeah. Was good.
Oh. So if I just had you on the box. Hey, went well. It went good. I had lots of people.